resourceful. When you woke up this morning, did you purposely say, I'm going to confine myself to a box? Or do you just avoid putting any conscious thought into today? When you're busy going at it, literally or figuratively, do you ever find yourself pausing for a moment to realize what's going on? Or are you just reacting? When you hear the saying, may I have your attention please, do you continue as you were, or do you consider the information you're about to receive might actually be valuable? When I was growing up, my mother used to ask me to do things, and sometimes her reasoning was, because I said so. Looking back, I wish perhaps I took the time to pause, think, and consider the ramifications of my choices. Good Monday to you. Today is Monday, October 31st, 2016. This is episode number 36 of Pause, Think, Consider. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, the last episode of October, which is significant because it is also the first full month of Pause, Think, Consider. We started in September, but this has been the entire first month of the program. In honor of it being the first full month, we're going to do something we haven't done on the program yet, which is to take an in-depth, week-long look at one particular topic and go in-depth to the point of breaking off different fragments. The topic we're going to discuss is changing or analyzing our buying and purchasing habits. Each day, we're going to examine a different facet of our buying and purchasing habits. So much of what we've talked about on this program is about finding ways to do more with less. Relish experiences. Not to be so materialistic. To value the goods and services that you have. And to take precedent of quality over quantity. Instead of simply talking about my maturation and my development, which is essentially started when I bought my own house and moved out. My buying and purchasing habits, while I had some prior to that, really blossomed once I went off on my own. And they have changed significantly from the first time that I bought something for myself to today. And while each particular topic that we talk about this week is talking about a particular nuance within those buying and purchasing habits, I just want to say up front, for full transparency, that I am not pushing for anyone to follow the exact same habits that I do. If they make sense for you, if in your value system they align in the same manner that they do for me, then by all means. But what we try and do on each and every episode of Pause, Think, Consider is to take a moment to consider additional information that we otherwise would not. And so, if looking and analyzing your buying and purchasing habits intimidates you, I can completely relate. And that's why for today's episode, we're going to analyze specifically habits. How habits are instilled and how we can change them. And for each and every episode, instead of just talking about my own personal experience, there's going to be extensive research, extensive third-party outside resources that talk about both sides of the story. Because without having information on both sides, it makes it more difficult. I don't want to be judgmental in the sense of say that you make the wrong decision, but it's nice to have information on both sides. That way, you can choose at least knowing informed about what the other side is about. So for today's episode, we're going to be talking about habits. The power of habits. Is it possible to change habits? How we can instill and ingrain habits. So there's 4 different resources that I want to discuss and go over. The first one is actually a book, and it's one of my favorite books that I've read, titled The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. I'm going to butcher his last name, so the author's name is Charles D. And I'm utilizing another website. This is kevinhabits.com that put together a great 1-page cheat sheet. A 1-page cheat sheet about the power of habit. And the highlights from it, the main takeaway, if you take nothing else away from the book, is that habits are triggered by cues, followed by an action, and end with a reward. To change a habit for good, you must get the reward so frequently that you begin to crave it when you don't. So it'd be similar to a runner's high. Some additional highlights from the book include life is built on habits. Without them, our brains would be paralyzed. Habits never really disappear, unfolding even if you try and fight them. So we mentioned the 3 elements to a habit are cue, action, and reward. Cues, actions, and rewards can vary highly from very simple to very complex. And rewards generate cravings over time, which can be powerful and yet also very dangerous. For example, companies like McDonald's and Procter & Gamble, they use cue, action, reward to hook consumers. In the case of McDonald's, every single McDonald's looks the same. The company deliberately tries to standardize stores' architecture and what employees say to customers. So everything is a consistent cue to trigger eating routines. The foods at some chains are specifically engineered to deliver immediate rewards. The fries, for instance, are designed to begin disintegrating the moment they hit your tongue. To change a habit, you must insert a new routine, but keep the same cue, and reward. An example of this would be Alcoholics Anonymous. And they succeed because it helps alcoholics use the same cues and get the same reward, but it shifts their routine. Alcoholics crave a drink because it offers escape, relaxation, companionship, the blunting of anxieties, and an opportunity for emotional release. They might crave a cocktail to forget their worries, but they don't necessarily crave feeling drunk. And so when habits stick, when you do them in groups, they create belief. And that is why AA is so effective. The power of a group to teach individuals how to believe. It happens whenever people come together to help one another change. Belief is easier when it occurs within a community. Some habits, known as keystone habits, have a domino effect. They can influence how people work, eat, play, live, spend, and communicate. The habits that matter the most are the ones that, when they start to shift, dislodge, and remake other patterns. Typically, people who exercise start eating better and becoming more productive at work. They smoke less and show more patience with colleagues and family, use credit cards less frequently, and say they feel less stressed. It's not completely clear why, but for many people, exercise is a keystone habit. Studies have documented that families who habitually eat dinner together seem to raise children with better homework skills, higher grades, greater emotional control, and more confidence. Willpower, which helps establish good habits, is a muscle that grows with stronger use. Company cultures are driven by habits, and therefore, to change them, you must change habits. Remember, companies are not families. An analogy used is their battlefields in civil war. Yet despite its capacity for warfare, most companies roll along relatively peacefully, year after year after year, because they have routines, they have habits. They create truces that allow everyone to set aside their rivalries. And this answer lies in seizing the same advantage that Tony Dungy, former coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Indianapolis Colts, but in specific to this book, he was the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When he took over, it became very apparent that habits needed to change. That's why social movements can start because of habits among a community. The example being Rosa Parks. Unlike other people who had been jailed for violating the bus segregation law, she was deeply respected and embedded within her community. So when she was arrested, it triggered a series of social habits, the habits of friendship that ignited an initial protest. It started among Parks' close friends, but it drew its power. Martin Luther King Jr. and other participants later said, because of a sense of obligation among the community, the social habits of weak ties, the community was pressured to stand together for fear that anyone who didn't participate wasn't someone you wanted to be friends with. A couple other fun facts from the book state you have a gambling problem if you view a near miss as a win. What they found, neurologically speaking, pathological gamblers got more excited about winning. When symbols lined up, even though they didn't actually win any money, the areas in their brains related to the emotion of reward were much more active than in non-pathological gamblers. But what was really interesting were their near misses. To pathological gamblers, near misses looked like wins. Their brains reacted almost the same way. But a non-pathological gambler, a near miss was like a loss. People without a gambling problem were better at recognizing that a near miss means you still lose. Fascinating book. So to recap, the power of habit. The main takeaway being that habits are triggered by cues followed by an action and end with a reward. Another great article that goes along with the book The Power of Habit is the 3 R's of habit change. This is by James Clear. How to start new habits that actually stick. And the 3 R's of habit change, very similar to the book The Power of Habit. Every habit you have, good or bad, follow the same 3-step pattern. Number 1 is reminder, which is a trigger that initiates the behavior. 2, a routine, the behavior itself, the action you take. And 3, a reward, the benefit you gain from doing the behavior. So let's break down what a habit looks like utilizing these 3 R's. We're going to do it for the example of answering a phone call. So the reminder, your phone rings. This reminder is going to initiate the behavior. The ring acts as a trigger or cue to tell you the answer, the phone. It's the prompt which starts the behavior. Then you physically answer the phone, which is the routine. That's the actual behavior. When your phone rings, you answer the phone. And finally, the reward, you find out who's calling. That's the reward, or potentially punishment, depending on who's calling. The reward is the benefit gained from doing the behavior. You wanted to find out who the person was on the other end, who was calling, and discovering that piece of information is the reward for completing the behavior. Very similar. Very, very similar to The Power of Habit. So then, additionally in the article, they talk about how you can use this structure to create new habits and actually stick to them. So step 1 is set a reminder for your new habit. You have to choose your reminder. The best way to discover a good reminder for a new habit is to write down 2 lists. In the first list, write down the things that you do each day without fail. This could be get in the shower, put your shoes on, brush your teeth, flush the toilet. In the second list, write down things that happen to you each day without fail. A traffic light turns red. You get a text message. A song ends. The sun sets. And then with those two lists, you'll have a wide range of things that you already do and already respond to each day. Those are perfect reminders for new habits. An example they use is, let's say you want to feel happier. Expressing gratitude is one proven way to boost happiness. Using the list above, you could pick a reminder, sit down for dinner, and use it as a cue to say one thing that you're grateful for today. So that when you sit down for dinner, you say one thing that you're grateful for. That small behavior has the ability to grow into a more grateful outlook on life in general. Step number 2, choose a habit that's incredibly easy to start. And then from there, determine what is your reward. It's important to celebrate. We want to continue to do things that make us feel good. Yes, in the case of working out, it's not always going to feel good. Maybe during. That's where if we reward ourselves, for some people, they get those endorphins going, and that's what makes them feel good. For other people, they have to dangle the carrot. And with setting up small, manageable, attainable rewards, you're going to feel better and better and better and continue to crave that reward, which causes you to instill and change a habit. Another article, we're going to breeze through this one. 29 ways to successfully ingrain a habit. This is from zenhabits.net. We've utilized them a few times. Here's the habit change cheat list. Do just one habit at a time. Start small. Do a 30-day challenge. Write it down. Make a plan. Know your motivations and be sure they're strong. Don't start right away. Write down all of your obstacles. Identify your triggers. For every single trigger, identify a positive habit you're going to do instead. Plan a support system. Ask for help. Become aware of self-talk. Stay positive. Have strategies to defeat the urge. Prepare for sabotagers. Talk to yourself. Have a mantra. Use visualization. Have rewards. Take it one urge at a time. Not one puff ever. Or in other words, no exceptions. Get rest. Drink lots of water. Renew your commitment often. Set up public accountability. Engineer it so it's hard to fail. Avoid some situations where you normally do your old habit. And if you fail, figure out what went wrong, plan for it, and try again. Benjamin Franklin's quote is saying, your net worth to the world is usually determined by what remains after your bad habits are subtracted from your good ones. And then, finally, there's the book, Making Habits, Breaking Habits. Why we do things, why we don't, and how to make any change stick. This is by psychologist Jeremy Dean. And what makes this book in particular so relevant And I have a feeling you've heard, maybe not of the book specifically, but of the main topic. The main point of how long it takes to make a habit. Because that is the question for everyone. Okay, I'm going to go through and I'm going to make the commitment to change where I eat. I'm going to change that I make more home-cooked meals. That I'm going to change and use more mass transportation than my car. How long does it take? Now, there isn't any concrete data. And in fact, in the book Making Habits, Breaking Habits, Jeremy Dean, whose training is in research, explores the actual science of habits through the existing empirical evidence on habit formation. There's a lot of numbers that get thrown around. And so, there isn't a concrete number, but the number that is very popular from advice columns and psychology websites is 21 days. Perhaps you've heard it yourself. That's why I said it might sound recognizable. 21 days. And that states that it takes 21 days for you to form and change a habit. Interestingly enough, in the book that Jeremy Dean wrote, the studies that he performed, the average across the participants who provided enough data, it showed it took 66 days until a habit was formed. Now, of course, that's going to depend entirely on what the habit is that's being formed. For example, people who resolve to drink a glass of water after breakfast were up to maximum automatically after about 20 days. Another experiment, the exercise habit, which proved to be the most tricky, conducted with 50 sit-ups after morning coffee. This was still not a habit after 84 days for a participant. However, walking for 10 minutes after breakfast turned into a habit after 50 days for another participant. It all depends on what you're trying to change. So in recap, we talked about the power of habits and changing habits. We talked at length about the book The Power of Habit, why we do what we do in life and business. And if there's any one thing to remember, is that habits are triggered by cues, followed by an action, and end with a reward. To change a habit for good, you must get the reward so frequently that you begin to crave it when you don't, similar to getting a runner's high. We also looked at the article by James Clear, The 3 R's of Habit Change, and how to start new habits that actually stick. Every single habit that you have, good or bad, follows the same 3-step procedure, which is reminder, the trigger that initiates the behavior, routine, the behavior itself, the action you physically take, and then the reward, the benefit you gain from doing this behavior. We gave you 29 ways to successfully ingrain a habit from zenhabits.net. And we talked about how long it takes to form a new habit. 21 days. That's what all the advice columns will show. And yet, there's conflicting numbers out there. It all depends on what the habit physically is that you're going to try and change. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Really excited for this week. Each day this week, we're going to be examining a different buying and purchasing habit. Hopefully with understanding how habits are instilled, how we can change them, what we can do in order to ensure that we succeed. It will make things that much easier when we start tomorrow discussing purchasing habits in exchange for my favorite, points, miles, and cash back. For more information on today's topic, though, please go to pausethinkconsider.com/habits. I look forward to talking to you all again tomorrow on Pause, Think, Consider.